I arrived in Los Angeles 2 days before the event. I've always been the one to arrive first and leave last on any project bearing the Marsh name. But this time was different. This time I wasn't here to manage. It was to relax, according to my mother. Her 70th birthday celebration was held at the Fairmont Century Plaza Hotel, right in the heart of Beverly Hills. An evening gala with gowns, champagne, press, celebrities, and of course, a dedicated media team, hand-picked by me. I signed every contract, arranged everything from the flowers to the lighting. It was a gift from my company, Marsh & Company, as a tribute to Odessa Marsh, a symbol of Southern elegance. I no longer expected a thank you, but I never imagined I'd be completely cut out of the very party I built. The moment I stepped into the grand hall, I sensed something was off. No one looked at me, not a single person. I stood still for a moment, convincing myself they were just busy, that maybe I had arrived earlier than expected. But then I saw Vanessa, my sister, wearing a white Ralph Lauren gown like a bride, smiling radiantly beside my mother, like the official heir. No one smiled at me. Not a single glance met mine. My sister gave me a brief, cold look. My mother smiled politely, then turned away like I was a stranger. I walked into the evening reception area, where a long, satin-covered table stretched beneath sparkling crystal chandeliers. I had requested the setup to follow a California vintage style. Champagne tablecloths, vintage wooden chairs, and warm golden candlelight. Each seat had a handwritten place card on wax-sealed parchment. I walked down the table, my heart beating slowly. I saw my parents' names, Vanessa's, her husband's, some old friends from the Charleston Heritage Club, even my mother's yoga instructor. But not mine. I thought maybe I missed it. I walked the length again. Still nothing. When I turned around, my mother was standing right behind me. The scent of her perfume was light, but sharp like a blade. "Elena," she said in that velvet voice that made strangers believe she was the perfect mother. "You must be tired. It's okay, we can talk later. Today is a happy day." "No seat for me?" I asked, not loudly, but without trying to whisper either. "Oh, probably a mix-up on the list," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You know, Vanessa handled that part. I thought you preferred to stay behind the scenes." I didn't say anything. If I opened my mouth, I might scream, and they'd say I was too sensitive, overreacting, ruining the moment. Across the table, Vanessa was posing with the MC and reporters. When she saw me, she raised her glass, an act of challenge, then turned away. I turned and walked out into the hallway, into the back prep area where staff were busy with dessert. One young server saw me and hesitated before approaching. "Ms. Marsh," he said softly, a little nervous. "I clearly remember seeing your name on the seating chart this morning. I printed the name cards myself, but by this afternoon, we got a new version from PR. Your name was removed." He bowed his head slightly. "I'm sorry, I'm just following orders." I placed a hand on my chest and took a slow, steady breath. "It's okay," I whispered. "Thank you for being honest." I walked into the VIP dressing room, knowing it would be empty at this hour. I stood in front of the mirror. The woman staring back at me wore a deep emerald velvet dress, a French twist, bold red lips. She looked like someone powerful, composed. But her eyes told a different story. Betrayed. Erased. Again. I remembered being 12, chosen as the lead in the school play. But at the last minute, my mother said, "Vanessa will take your role. She needs the confidence." I gave in. I always gave in. I was the rational one, the one who could handle disappointment better. I thought, after all these years, they would see me as part of the family, not just a tool behind the curtain. But no. Tonight, they proved I was never meant to have a seat at the table, even though I was the one who built the entire room. I left the dressing room after nearly 10 minutes of standing still, silent as if not moving would stop the pain from spreading. I stepped into the hallway, walking past staff in black suits welcoming guests, and no one stopped me. I had been a shadow for far too long to draw any attention. I knew exactly where Vanessa would be, where the cameras were aimed. The rooftop of the Fairmont Hotel featured a hanging garden decorated like something out of a vintage movie. Silver cocktail tables, wall-mounted fireplaces, string lights wrapped around tiny olive trees, and a balcony overlooking West Olympic Boulevard. That's where the private family photo session was held, an addition my mother made at the last minute to capture the legacy of 3 generations of successful women. 3 generations. But only 2 people stood there. Vanessa was now in her second dress of the evening, a dramatic backless design, standing beside my mother, both of them beaming as they held pale pink martinis. One of my mother's hands rested on Vanessa's waist, intimate, proud. And me? I stood back, just beyond a floral partition, hearing the photographer's voice clearly. Vanessa, look to your left. Perfect. Raise your glass. Ms. Odessa, place your left hand on your daughter's shoulder. Perfect. No one called for me. No one looked around, wondering where I was. In that moment, I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt familiar, as if I had been here before, many times. When I was 10, I was chosen to be the host of my school's anniversary celebration. I had practiced for a whole month, wrote my own script, and prepared every detail meticulously. But 1 week before the event, my mother said, "Vanessa is a little emotionally fragile. If you don't let her take your place, she'll think you're always stealing her spotlight." I nodded. And then I stood behind the curtain, clapping for my sister, the one who just memorized my script, but was praised for being the star. When I was 15, I received a full scholarship to Stanford's National Summer Program for outstanding students. I was so excited, I printed out the letter and placed it on the breakfast table. But my mother glanced at it and said, "Are you sure? Vanessa needs your help this summer to study for her college entrance exams. Stanford can wait, but family can't." I later lied to my teacher and said I had changed my mind. At 22, I launched my first event planning company using scholarship money and savings from 2 years of college side jobs. Within a year, I landed a contract with a boutique hotel chain in Miami. I emailed the news to my family, attaching a magazine interview where I was featured as a young female entrepreneur. My mother didn't reply. But a month later, I saw that very magazine cover in the family photo frame, covered up with a photo of Vanessa. It sat in our living room. Growing up in my family felt like being part of a play where you weren't cast as the lead. Every scene revolved around the perfect daughter, Vanessa, the one always praised for being graceful, talented, and charismatic. But here's something no one knew. I was the one who built that image for her. I created Vanessa's first website when she wanted to launch a blog about Southern sophisticated living. I picked the color scheme, wrote the content, created the slogan, designed the media plan. I taught her how to use social media, how to speak on camera, how to pose, how to engage. When Vanessa's blog Southern Spirit hit 50,000 followers, I thought she would credit me. But in her first interview with the local news, she smiled and said, "I do everything myself, from writing to editing. I'm a perfectionist." And I smiled along. Back at tonight's gala, I still didn't have a seat, but I was offered a place at the staff table by the hotel's event manager, who looked more nervous than I did. I declined. I wasn't the help. I wasn't an extra. I went down to the operations area to double-check the contract list, just to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. My name, Elena Marsh, was still listed as the official signatory of the entire event. I scrolled through the files on my tablet. The venue rental contract, guest room bookings, dessert invoices, even the music licensing for my mother's tribute video. Every payment was processed by my company. The event planner wasn't anyone from the Marsh family. It was Marsh and Company. I closed the tablet and tried to steady my hands. not because of the money, but because of the truth. They still needed me to build everything, yet refused to let me appear in a single photo. At 9 p.m., the music played and the MC came out, inviting everyone to prepare for the most inspiring woman tribute, Odessa Marsh. I stood in the hallway behind the stage, where I could see the screen. The tribute video began with old photos. Young Odessa, her wedding to my father, a family picture from 1987, with a little girl in the back holding a stuffed cat, me. But halfway through the video, I disappeared. No teenage photos, no graduation pictures, none from the major projects I helped Mom secure funding for. Instead, it was filled with Vanessa, standing next to Mom, receiving awards, talking to the press, signing with nonprofits. And finally, my mother's voice came through. Legacy isn't just what you leave behind. It's about who you choose to carry it forward. And on screen, Vanessa, in white, beside our mother, glowing in the spotlight like a coronation. I didn't cry. I just stood there. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through sheer silk curtains and the sound of a flower delivery truck down the street. The suite was still perfect, the scent of clean linens, the aroma of espresso from the auto machine, wooden floors gleaming in the morning light. But I felt unreal. I lay there for a long while, staring at the ceiling, then got up and opened the door to grab the newspaper like I always did. A white envelope sat neatly on the floor, embossed with the event's logo, Odessa at 70, a Southern legacy. Inside was the official media schedule for the week-long event: gala dinner, tribute ceremony, women in leadership panel, a vineyard brand shoot, and the legacy forward keynote at Getty Hall. I read every line. My name was nowhere. Not in the list of honored guests, not as a speaker, not even a production credit. There wasn't a single mention of Marsh and Company, but Vanessa Marsh's name was there, twice. 1. Official media representative. 2. Heir to the Marsh legacy liaison. I sat down, the chill of the tile seeping through my silk robe. It didn't feel like I was being excluded. It felt like I was being replaced. I called Marco, my PR director, the man I once pulled out of a scandal 3 years ago. He answered in a groggy voice, clearly just waking up. Elena, hey. I meant to call you last night, but Odessa told us you wanted to stay behind the scenes this time, that you were feeling overwhelmed. She said I declined to appear? I asked, my tone flat. Yeah, she said Vanessa would represent instead of you because she connects better with the younger audience, that you didn't want to be seen as controlling everything. I didn't reply. I just quietly hung up. I wasn't mad at Marco. I knew he was stuck in the middle, but I was starting to understand. They didn't just want me gone. They wanted me erased. Reasonably. I went down to the event logistics area to check the run of showboards, the kind I used to approve as the final authority. This time, I was just an uninvited spectator. At the content review table, I ran into an AV assistant printing out the gala cue sheet. I asked for a copy. She handed it to me without question. Part 1. The Life of Odessa. Part 2. Odessa and the Heir, Vanessa. Part 3. Legacy Speech, Live Remarks by Vanessa. No Part 4. No me. No mention of my company. I took that sheet, went back to my room, and opened my laptop. I opened the folder labeled Halden Marsh 70 Funding. Inside were all the invoices, sponsorship contracts, and vendor lists. Every single event was signed off by me. Every one of them listed Marsh and Company as the production company. I snapped a photo of the cue sheet and saved it. Not for revenge, but to remember, to archive, so no one would ever dare say I imagined it. That afternoon, as I sat in the lounge, a hotel staff member brought over a small silver tray. On it sat a hot espresso and an ivory envelope. No sender name. But I recognized the handwriting immediately. Vanessa. I opened the letter. Inside, a single line. She chose me. Don't make a mess of things just because you can't accept your place. I laughed. Not loudly, not bitterly, just a breath pushed from the base of my chest, because at last it was clear. Vanessa didn't win this role. I gave it to her. Year after year I stepped back, gave up space, held myself back, to avoid conflict, to keep the peace, to not be seen as jealous. And now, she thinks she deserves it. No, Vanessa. I'm not mad at you for sitting in that chair. I'm mad at myself for building that chair for you to sit on. That evening, when Vanessa appeared on the event's livestream, introduced as the Legacy Liaison, I sat quietly in my room, watching on my iPad. She stood confidently, microphone in hand, smiling as if she were born to do this. My sister, Vanessa said, like it was some kind of fairy tale, taught me that hosting an event isn't just about flowers and lighting. It's about emotion. And today, though she's not here with us, she's always behind the scenes, carrying us forward. The room erupted in applause. I stared at the screen. She said, "She's not here." Not here? Or not allowed to appear? I set the iPad down and pulled the black leather notebook from the drawer, the one I always carried but rarely used. I turned to the first blank page and wrote in black ink. They don't just want me to disappear. They want me forgotten, with someone else smiling in my place. I closed the notebook and began planning to reclaim the spotlight they'd bought and branded with my name to light up themselves. I didn't need to scream, write long posts online, or give interviews. I just needed to do what I do best: run the back end. And this time, I wasn't setting up the spotlight. I was cutting the power. I started where few would think to look: the sponsorship contract for the gala dinner with a premium Napa Valley wine supplier. It was one of the first deals I signed, back in March, with a clause stating that any changes to the official event roster must be reconfirmed by the deposit holder, and that was me. I called the manager directly. Jonathan, a refined man who once sent my mother 6 sample bottles for Easter. "Hello, Jonathan," I said, my voice light as air. "Marsh & Company has decided to withdraw its sponsorship of the gala dinner on the 20th. The event has undergone personnel changes without formal notice. I'd like the deposit refunded per the contract terms." Jonathan hesitated briefly, then replied, "If that's the case, we'll process it within the day. Very sorry to hear this." One call. A piece of the spotlight shattered. Next was the yacht at Marina del Rey, reserved for a private party for the Marsh family and close guests, a staged display to showcase a legacy of elegance and southern charm. I had fronted 80% of the cost. I sent an email with the subject, "Change of representative, booking cancellation." No explanation necessary. The contract clearly stated only the named representative could approve or cancel the reservation. 10 minutes later, I received the refund confirmation. Yacht, canceled the villa in Malibu, where my family planned to host the press and influencers. Also, a contract through Marsh & Company. Canceled. And just like that, brick by brick beneath their feet, every curtain backstage, every pillar of light they thought eternal, began to shake. I didn't need anyone to know I did it. I just needed them to feel the consequences. That evening, I wore a simple long black dress, my hair tied low, face bare, and stepped out of my room straight to the back of the gala. I didn't need to be in the spotlight. I just wanted to be there the moment the lights began to flicker. From the shadowed corner near the kitchen, I peeked through the wooden door into the main hall. On stage, the MC was delivering a speech, praising Odessa as a woman who not only built a family, but crafted an empire of inspiration. Lights sparkled overhead. Dresses shimmered like flowing wine. Gold, silver, pearls, sequins. It was a miniature Oscars. Vanessa sat to my mother's right, nodding like an heir ready to gracefully accept the crown. I scanned the room for Marco, the banquet manager. I once helped bring his wife over from Italy for cancer treatment. He stood by the service area, and when he spotted me, he gave a small nod. I nodded back, subtly. The signal was given. Dessert was being served. A multi-tiered millefoglie cake my mother had specifically requested to be flown in cold from New York and defrosted exactly 1 hour before serving. Guests held their silver forks. Cameras flashed. A few were live streaming the finale. Just as the MC invited my mother to speak, Marco calmly approached, walked to her side, and whispered something into her ear. I saw her frown. "But we already provided a guarantee, didn't we?" my mother asked, loud enough for the nearby rows to hear. Marco, polite but unwavering, replied, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but the credit card on file under Marsh & Company was revoked earlier this afternoon. The system's showing a payment failure. We'll need an alternative method to proceed." Everything froze for a moment. Vanessa leaned over. "Mom, should I use my card?" My mother waved her off. "Don't be ridiculous." I saw it clearly. Her face shifted from shock to anger, then to fear. One of the sponsors, Mr. Charles, who had donated $100,000 to her charity last year, leaned over and whispered, "What's going on, Odessa?" My mother didn't respond. A PR director in the back row pulled out their phone to start texting. A journalist raised their camera, secretly filming. Marco remained, unmoved, unshaken. He repeated gently, "Without a valid payment method, we're required to suspend service per insurance policy." I watched as chaos began to brew, and I knew I didn't need to stand on stage to reclaim my voice. I only needed them to hear my silence. I slipped away while everyone else was still whispering, snapping photos, making calls. No one saw me. No one asked for me. No one dared say my name. And that's when I knew. I had taken back the one thing they tried so hard to erase: my presence. I knew what was coming. My mother never loses control without crafting a new script to cover for it. The next morning, just as I took a sip of espresso, my phone buzzed. The first message came from Haley, my friend in New York, also a fashion magazine editor. "Elena, have you seen this?" A screenshot was attached. The headline from a social media news outlet read, "Daughter causes scene at mother's birthday gala. Jealousy or breakdown?" The cover photo showed my mother giving a speech with a strained smile, while Vanessa stood behind her, trying to calm her. Perfectly framed, perfectly lit, like they had stepped out of a documentary on selfless grace. The article quoted an anonymous source, close to the Marsh family, describing me as an unpredictable daughter with controlling tendencies, currently going through a personal crisis. The closing line made my entire body tense. It's heartbreaking to watch someone with such promise spiral, simply because they can't accept that their time has passed. I put the phone down on the table, my palms cold. For a brief moment, I almost believed they might be right, that maybe I had gone too far. But then I looked at my own hands, still steady. I looked at the contracts on my laptop, still under my name. I looked at the emails from vendors, still respectful, still honoring agreements. I hadn't gone too far. I'd simply gone in a direction they could no longer control. Marco, my communications specialist, called me at 9:27 a.m. "Elena, they're trying to control the narrative. A media insider I know just gave me a heads up. There's a strong chance your mother's planning a heartfelt segment on next week's talk show to win public sympathy." "About what?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "About motherhood, about loving your children even when they disappoint you. And of course, her grace and forgiveness." I laughed. A dry, clipped laugh. "Fine, I'm not going to argue." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to tell the truth." That afternoon, I went to a small cafe in Culver City, where I had arranged to meet Angela Wu, a journalist who once owed me a favor after she was threatened by a major event firm for exposing employee exploitation. Angela arrived right on time, recorder in hand, but without any rush. I didn't need to explain much. I just opened my laptop and handed her a folder titled The Erasure. Inside were sponsorship contracts, emails about the revoked coordination rights, proof of fund transfers from Marsh & Co.'s account, recorded calls with Marco, and a screenshot of an email from my mother's own assistant requesting I be removed from media visuals for branding reasons. Angela reviewed it all in silence. Finally, she looked up. "You don't want a hit piece? I want a clear piece. I don't need blood. I need light." Angela nodded, her eyes lighting up with the kind of justice that only unbought journalists still carry. That night, I didn't stay up to watch the public's reaction. I turned off all notifications. I soaked in the tub, lit a candle, played some jazz. Not because I was relaxing, but because I was reclaiming a part of myself I had left in their shadows. The next morning, Angela's piece was front and center in the Society and Power section. When Silence is Abused, the untold story of Elena Marsh. The article wasn't sensational. It didn't attack anyone. It simply laid out the timeline, with financial records, contracts, actual roles, and the illegal alterations to organizational records. It ended with a line that made my throat tighten. You don't have to scream to be heard. Sometimes, you just have to stand up, turn off the switch, and let them sit in the darkness they created. That evening, I received an email from a major event producer in Atlanta. "Thank you for speaking up. We need more people like you." I didn't respond. I just wrote in my journal. They thought I needed a microphone to be noticed, but they forgot. I built the entire sound system. 3 days after Angela's article went viral across social media, I received an email from my mother's personal assistant. The subject line was brief. "Reconciliation brunch, attendance request." I didn't need to open it to know what they wanted. Another performance, this time branded as Peace, Forgiveness, Reunion. Just like my mother's usual strategy, the media queen who turns every crack into light reflected back at herself. I went. Not because I forgave, but because sometimes you have to close the door yourself, the one they keep slightly ajar just to trap you inside. The hotel banquet room was styled in champagne beige tones. Long tables adorned with lavender flowers, soft classical music, ambient lighting. My mother sat at the head of the table, impeccably made up, wearing a cream silk dress. Vanessa sat beside her, wearing that gentle yet guarded expression, like someone freshly wounded but still gracious enough to forgive. As I walked in, the chatter faded to silence. All eyes followed me like I'd just stepped out of a cracked mirror, reflecting too clearly what no one wanted to see. I didn't sit. I didn't smile. I walked straight to the head of the table, where Odessa Marsh, the same woman who once called me her pride and joy when the cameras were rolling, was trying hard to maintain a composed face. "Elena," she said, smiling like I was a child home from college, "I know things got messy, but really, it's all just a misunderstanding. You know how the media is." I nodded. "Yes, I know the media, and I also know when it's being directed." Vanessa shifted slightly. My mother kept smiling, but her lips were pulled tight like thread. "You're still family, Elena. I don't want to see you hurt." I pulled a leather envelope from my bag and placed it on the table, among the crystal glasses and neatly folded napkins. Inside are all the emails, contracts, recordings, and images related to the recent event. The same evidence published in the article. But I didn't bring this for an apology. My mother sat up straight, touching the edge of the envelope as if it were a blade. I continued. "I came here to say one thing, in front of everyone, those who always saw me as the one behind the scenes." I took a breath, then let it go like 10 years of weight. "I don't need the seat you never planned to give me, because I brought my own table." A soft breath escaped from someone at the far end of the table, whether in awe or shock, I couldn't tell. Vanessa stood up, her voice tight. "Elena, don't make this dramatic. Everything could have been fixed if you hadn't tried to ruin it." I cut her off, my tone calm. "You can't ruin what was never built on truth." She sat down, saying nothing more. I turned to my mother, one last time. You taught me many things, Odessa. You taught me calculation, how to keep a flawless exterior, and how to yield until there's nothing left. But you also taught me the most important thing, though you never meant to. When you're erased from your own story, write it back in by hand. My mother looked at me, for the first time saying nothing. Not because she didn't know what to say, but because she no longer controlled who held the microphone. I turned and walked toward the door. I didn't expect a voice to call me back. I didn't need one. Right before I left, I paused, without turning back. You can keep the spotlight. I'll keep my name. And then I left. No applause, no tears, just the sound of heels on tile and a final door closing by the one who used to be locked outside. I left the hotel through the back entrance. Not because I was running away, but because I no longer cared for the grand exit, the place where people turn around, hoping to be stopped, seen off, or apologized to. I didn't need any of that. The car was already waiting. The driver asked where I wanted to go. I said, airport. The flight back to New York wasn't booked yet, but I knew I wanted to leave the moment I walked out of that room without anyone stopping me. My mother used to say, leaving without being seen off is failure. I believe not being held back is freedom. 3 weeks later, I stood on a rooftop in Tribeca, the Hudson River wind whipping through the sleeves of my white linen shirt. In front of me was a team of assistants, stage directors, and tech crew preparing for the inaugural Women Who Build conference, founded and led by me. Not out of revenge, but to create a space for women like me, those who had been edited out of their own stories. The event sold out in 48 hours. No familiar faces from the Marsh family, and none were needed. I didn't need them to prove anything. I just needed myself, in the right place, with the right voice. That evening, as I stepped onto the stage, I wore a charcoal suit, hair in a high bun, no earrings, no glittering accessories. I looked out over an audience of over 300, mostly women, and began with a soft line. I was once excluded from a party I personally helped prepare. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because I reminded them of a truth they didn't want to keep around. The whole room fell silent, like they were holding their breath. Maybe you felt that too, that you were someone's shadow, that your presence had to be adjusted to fit the frame, that you only had worth when you didn't shine too brightly. I paused. Not because I forgot what to say, but because I wanted them to feel each beat of their own hearts. I'm here to say, you don't have to sit in the seat they never meant for you. You can build your own table, invite others in, and tell the story your way. The first clap came from the middle row, then another, then all at once. Not loud, not forced, just enough, like a quiet affirmation that they understood. That night, back in my small Chelsea apartment, I didn't rush to my laptop, didn't check email. I made tea, played Miles Davis, stood by the window, watching the golden lights drip down the street, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the need to do anything more to earn myself. On the table was a package, no sender name. I opened it. It was a letter, handwritten. I regret how things turned out. Maybe you're stronger than I thought. Odessa. No mom. No love you. A confession. Not enough to make me cry, but enough that I no longer needed anything else from her. I didn't burn the letter, didn't frame it. I just clipped it to the end of my journal, where I once wrote, "They're trying to erase my name, but I'll come back in my own handwriting." 6 months later, I flew to Palm Springs to plan the wedding of a director's daughter, someone who had followed my story through the press. She came up to me, hugged me, and said, "I read your story and saw myself in it. You're the reason I dared to leave my father's company and build my own studio." I just smiled, gently. No nods, no sense of ownership. I didn't need to be worshipped. I just needed to know I had once turned something dim into light. That night, I reopened my journal. On the first page, I once wrote, "They didn't just want me gone. They wanted me forgotten," with a smile on someone else's face. Underneath, I added, "They didn't succeed. And I don't need their recognition to exist." Then I closed the journal, because the truest form of existence is when you no longer need anyone's permission to show up. And a real legacy is when you choose to put your name on what you build, so no one has the right to erase it.